But I'm going to use a different one. That FaZe is not even a top 5 team anymore. FaZe is not even a top 5
Give us your
team.
top 5 then, just so you can complete the point then. Come on, give us it. What's your top 5 if they're not top 5?
So I have to pick top 5 right now.
I mean, logically, for them to be not top 5, you'd have to know the top 5.
Well, I know the top 5. Yes, but I don't know the exact order.
Oh, you don't have to give us the order. Just give us 5 teams better than them. How about that? Give us 5 teams
at this
better
moment. At this moment, Vitality, Heroic.
Oh god, stop the free kick. It's okay. Give him time.
It's not FaZe.
It's not FaZe. Well, obviously not. So.
Vitality, Heroic, and I would say
Navi.
Navi would be 3.
Liquid.
Cloud9.
Liquid's top 5.
Cloud9 would be 4. Thank you.
Oh, Cloud9.
Cloud9 would be 4. Thank you. And I would. I don't know. I don't have the 5th one, and it's not FaZe. Maybe I just need to cheat a little bit, see what happens here. Who am I missing?
Just say Liquid. Just come to the dark side.
I can't
Ents?
say Liquid.
Do you think Ents is better?
No way.
I'm just trying to help him. Trying to help him, you know.
No way.
Listen, I can't co-sign this tweet at all.
Listen,
I think you would say
Ents is closer. Ents is
oh,
G2?
G2?
G2
yeah, why not?
Oh, in that case easily.
Liquid.
Yeah, they go
G2 or Liquid easily.
Yeah. G2 Ents. Liquid is not even close to FaZe.
Right, give us the reasons why then. Why is FaZe not?
They beat them at Kato.
Why is FaZe not good enough?
Wait, what did you say, Maui?
They beat him at LAN on Kato. They beat FaZe at LAN.
Who did?
Liquid.
Liquid beat them to qualify to playoffs of Kato.
2 months ago, dude. Like, who cares about that? Did you see them play on Major?
So you mean right this moment?
And they made playoffs.
Yeah, at this moment, right now. What do you mean?
They made playoffs. I mean, whatever. If you don't want to say
they made playoffs and they lose.
I was almost trying to help your case by saying it, but I think Liquid's right. I think Liquid's neck and neck.
But you're just trying to defend Liquid. Anyway, my point is, FaZe is not even top 5 right now. The reason why I'm saying this is because I rewatched all of their games from the Major and from the RMR and from the Last Chance qualifier, and it is just terrible what I'm seeing. It's just all over the place. They don't have anything to fall back onto when things get rough. Their basics are all over the place. If you watch the demo review that I did against their game against Heroic on Inferno, it was a 16-7 for Heroic. I think you did that game on your watch party, Duncan. I was on Richard's stream, I think, and we were watching that together. It's just the way they do things on the basic level is just not even close to top 5, not even close to top 8, let alone top 5, because spacing, utility, all these things, rotations, understanding and reactions to what's going on the map is very poor. Very, very poor. And all these sharp teams with sharp individuals, they don't have any depth behind like their game. They're just sharp. They're punishing them as soon as their individual level drop. As soon as it drops a little bit, as soon as you don't see Twist or Broky having a great game or Rob's having a great game. Rob's, by the way, who is baiting way more than he did before. There is a couple of rounds that I did in the demo review that you will clearly see that his movement is supposed to be completely different if you want to win the round. And you can see Kerrigan in front of his team a bunch of times where everybody else is staggering behind. They're not entering the site together. Those are the basics. And like I said, that makes me wonder what the hell is happening on their practice. What are they? They're just booking scrims and they're playing? And somebody comes along tomorrow and is like, okay, we need to add this threat. Look what I see. I see this flash here. We do this molly here, this smoke there, and we just go into the site. And nobody's paying attention to the basic stuff, right? And then I had a thing where I explained the coaching, the state of coaching, like a few months ago, Duncan. I think you and me did the video. And when I was explaining, the analysts are not doing pretty much anything. They're being underused. They're being useless. And I think one of their analysts called me out on it. I didn't respond to any of it, but he's like, yeah, you cannot say that, maybe because we are not doing it your way doesn't mean it's wrong. Like he was like trying to call me out between the lines in a kind of polite way, right? And then they go out in Rio and they go 0-3. I watch their demos and it's just a catastrophe, right? And it comes down to Kerrigan and the lack of coaching in that team and the coaching structure in that team. Because if you have a proper coaching staff in that team that will pay attention to that and show you on the demo, like, listen, dude, look at how we are going into the site. Like, look how far away are you from me? Look at our flashes. Look at our utility. I saw them in the rounds where they are 135 with full gun rounds and they have one flash left. And they don't have control of bracket or banana. And they try to execute it to the site. So how do you win those rounds, right? Those are the basics. That's nothing to do with your aiming, like your raw skill or anything like that. That's the basics that you do on practice. Makes me wonder what the hell is happening there. Like, what are they doing? I want to see, I want to observe their practice to see how that feels. Like, is it there is no theory, there is no, like, we just book the scrims against 4 teams, we play, see you later, see you tomorrow, gonna go get some dinner, and that's it. Like, that's how it looks like to me. And that's the result.
I'm so on board with what you're saying, Kassad. I would say that I've been noticing this about FaZe for the last, I want to say, like 3 years, where it really does feel like a lot of their players come across to me as uncoachable. The nades that FaZe have been throwing to me, I mean, not even to me, they're just outdated. A lot of the ones, so like, you go into a practice server and you see when you throw this smoke, the land time, like the air time and the land, like when it lands, it's like 3.5 seconds after you threw it. The way that FaZe have been throwing nades for such a long time have been the nades that have just been inefficient in terms of timings. Like the ones that a lot of tier 2 teams, even like Liquid, throw better nades. Like the Gamer Legion obviously threw better nades. Vitality are throwing better nades now. Heroic are throwing some of the best nades out there. FaZe are throwing these nades that to me are so outdated. They're just throwing ones that are like I remember very specifically watching some of their games and just like when I played at the ECL level a couple years ago, we knew more updated nades than what FaZe were throwing, and so we never looked at FaZe demos because we were just thinking it is just individuals popping off, getting multi-frags, relying on their ability, relying on their fundamentals, which sometimes even fall apart in a game, and so like, yeah, the coaching aspect of this team to me is so frustrating because you would think if Innershine's there and Rawban's there, and this is why I didn't vote for Rawban as coach of the year or anything like that, because they're just throwing nades that are just out of date. They're throwing nades that are worse in terms of the meta. You're not able to cross spaces as quickly, and that's why a lot of these teams that are in the tier 2 space to me are more consistently finding upset victories, and they're not having to they don't need these crazy individual pop-off performances from Brokey and Twist because these tier 2 teams don't have them because they're throwing a smoke that lands a second and a half faster. Like, that's such a huge difference in terms of timings when you're playing high-level CS. You need the grenade that is going to allot you space quicker and then change up the rotations so that vent nuke that vent rotator on nuke is not going to be able to get down to lower as quickly because the smoke you threw for a cross smoke lands so much faster that you can basically meet him as he's swinging out of the vent. That's such a huge difference maker, and FaZe are missing out on those timings, and they're relying on individuals so consistently to pop off and to hit headshots that's why those guys are admittedly paid more than everybody else, like Twist and Rops and Rain, whatever, because they can have those. Not hope. I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens with the future of their contracts, but if they're going to just keep playing like that, they're going to fall out of favor in terms of consistency. And it's kind of this same cycle that I've seen for such a long time with, like, I think LGSK was the first time I really noticed this cycle where it's that what happens is these underdog teams, they learn the meta better than anybody. In fact, they might even create the meta with what SK did with Fallen and Coldzera. They like learn the strats better than anybody's. They gain such crazy confidence because they understand the meta. They have better nades than everybody in the space. And then because they just rely on their individual ability, because they are getting ahead because of these little incremental differences in their utility and their strategy, that they begin to believe that their own ability is what's carrying them there. And so they begin to relax. They don't really try as hard in terms of the prep work, in terms of learning all the new nades. And so they start to fall off a little bit because they think, you know what, our individual ability is what's going to actually carry us at the end of the day. And that's why you see Fallen with these crazy highlight rounds in tournaments where like SK is not actually the favorite to make it deep, and then Coldzera is winning this crazy 1v3 clutch. It's almost like towards the tail end of a team's tactical dominance, their individual ability shines the most because they have the most confidence as individuals. And that's kind of what FaZe have been running on for the last 6 months, where it's just off of these crazy fumes where they believe that they're the best players in the server time and time and time again. But in actuality, they're way behind in terms of tactics. They're like a year and a half behind.
And that is why, sorry, Duncan, before you jump in, and that is why, first of all, if you watch the G2 Vitality, for example, you'll notice the same thing. G2 is coming back on nuke all the way to the truck to throw the cross smokes, when there is like 3 versions of the same smokes to throw him like more forward, closer to silo, things like that. That is the same thing that you just described, just different map, right? But also what I wanted to mention is like, what pissed me off about that tweet from Carrigan when he's like took a picture of Twist is like, oh, he's already back on deathmatch, and like how deathmatch is not what you need.
To learn some nades.
That match is not what you need. Like you don't have disadvantage when it comes to fights in a one-on-one with like aiming. That's not your disadvantage. That's not your flaw. That's not your problem. That you have team problems, you have like reaction problems, you have utility problems, you have understanding the flank, those type of problems. Go watch the game against Heroic. You'll see him watch flank a couple of times, staying on the flank where he could be helping the team trade in the A side of Inferno. And he's staying somewhere down. The same goes for Brokey. Brokey positioned himself, even when he doesn't have an op, he positioned himself in a spot where he's doing nothing for anyone, instead of trading with people who are in front of him. You can see Kerrigan jumping out, dying alone, Rain being 7 steps behind. And I did a comparison of the same similar exit from Heroic, and the way they execute, the way they go out together in a certain spot, and you can compare those two and see where the difference is. How can, when you see if Robs needs to aim at 2 people at the same time, when Shush is aiming at 1 and then on the second. And those are the basic things. You don't need a fucking deathmatch. Just go, rewatch your game, talk to your coach, talk to your, analyst or whoever it is that you have, figure out the basics, and you will be back at the top. Now you are top 10, and that's all.
I mean, I will say, I do think it's good that Kassad actually gave the example, because I was going to also tie this to why I think G2's form is so mercurial, which is when you make these super teams of all the skilled aimers, who, by the way, the reason a super team never really works is because usually there's not enough resources for 3 people to be a start once. It cannot exist. One person's always compromising. Now, maybe you can do that by map, or maybe in this, I always thought the way it worked in FaZe was like fucked up shit. Like, Brokey's not really like a traditional AWPer anyway, so he doesn't really have to have the resources that one does. Also, at the same time, Rops does the like mega lurking, and Twist is like semi in the entry. So like, in a way it works, but in the same way in G2, that's why at their best, analysts, even some really good analysts, just watch the screen and go, they must win every tournament. And it's like, you think the G2 team's going to win every... No, like, this streak ends, like, and it's over after that. Like, they'll be the 3rd or 4th best team. Spoiler, they probably are. Like, they blew this major, but they probably are. Like, if I put them in a tournament tomorrow, they would be my top 3 or 4 team to win the tournament. They wouldn't be number 1, though. They wouldn't have a factor that I could say for sure. Now, the reason the FaZe one's a bit different is, I pointed this out while they were doing it. Even all their championships they won by just being, like, mega clutch late in the game. And it's not even like Kerrigan had to call a whole good game. Just at the end, it's like what Launders always says, yes, after the golden call on the 29th round. If you had that call, you win the game, and it's the opposite of what that Nico example. You have the memorable call that won the whole game, and everyone says you must be a genius. So if you look at the current team, here's the difference. When I said they were like 5% worse than the winning era, right before they won EPL and won the Grand Slam, I think they were very similar to that era. I'll point out, they didn't win the close games. This major was really fucking bad. Like, I've never seen them look anywhere close to as bad as this. Like, they could have like a run in a game that was bad, but they'd always recounter with a run back, or second half they'd pick it up, or they'd win your map pick. But think of all these things, right? First of all, the Into the Breach best of 1 might be the lowest point ever of this FaZe team. I don't give a fuck about the old Rio B&E one. That was a full best of 3. They were in winning position. The ITB one, like, they just get back in the game and then immediately just like sort of throw up all over the floor and just lose the whole game. And they're just getting battered. Like the one area Kazad's talking about, aim, they're not even winning aim duels, mate. Like, Rain is getting beat up like the player people thought he was 2 years ago, where they were like, cut him, get him out of CS. Is he the new Olafmeister? Get him out too. Like, that game, mate, makes people think you are fucking washed. Then you add the Twists angle. It's not great for Maui, because almost immediately after he did that video, Twists has just shit the bed like every fucking tournament and big match after that, and quite frankly looks like, relative to his role, the worst player in the team. And all I'll say is this: what will really make people upset if they're an NA fan is when you go to that page on HLTV with the team and you go to players and you go to like opening kills T-side and then you go T-side total, you'll quickly discover he's not even an entry player on that team anymore, mate. He doesn't get the entry attempts. Like, he's actually just fucking, I don't know what's happened to him. His game's gone off the boil. I think that's why Kassad did that Carrigan did that tweet Kassad referenced, the one it's like he's in the DM, because people know, like, if you've been watching the game, he's been having some fucking bad times. Then let's just look at their map pool. A map pool always tells you so much about a team, because since they didn't change players, map pool will nearly always, like we're talking about the G2 example, I don't care what your results are, your maps are strong based on who your players are and then how up to date your tactical understanding of the map is. Think about when they were at their prime and they won their championships. Their 2 best maps were Nuke and Inferno, and then after that they just played some Mirage, and usually they didn't even have to pick it. It was the decider, right? Right now, the best map for them, in theory, is fucking Overpass and Ancient, right? They're picking Overpass. That's mainly because most people just don't like that map. It's always in the middle of people's map pool. And even then, they can get their shit pushed in like Heroic did. So it's clearly not a great map for them. Then you look at Ancient. Go and look. They're never picking it. That's just like third maps and other people picking it, and they're just fragging out and winning the map. When you actually look at the classic maps, they've dropped off a fucking cliff completely. Then the Anubis map got added. Remember, there's another problem if you had a team that was on top Maui in the past. That was before Anubis came out. Since Anubis came out, and more teams either pick it or make it the third map if they have the last veto, right? Everyone's going to think because of that Na'Vi game, this team's good on that map. Are they? Fuck. The joke is even in the Na'Vi game, they were this close to losing the whole thing. Like 15-9 or something, that would be the whole major over. So what have they got in the map pool? They've got like 1.5 maps. Like, you can never... right, if we're only doing right now, we're not doing like 2 months ago, like 2 tournaments ago... If we're doing right now, I'd agree with Kassan. They're not top 5. Why would they be? The crazy thing is, it was actually only the aforementioned clutch factor, just kicking in out of nowhere in a couple of matches at this major, that got them to a top 8. It's actually a miracle they made top 8. Like, they could have lost so much. They could have lost to BNE. They could have lost to fucking Na'Vi. They could have lost, obviously they did to Heroic, but they could have even lost earlier. Like, the whole thing, even them to get a map was crazy. So, like, it was only the clutch factor at the end. That's all they had at the end. So I sort of agree. I don't necessarily know what you do tactically, because as I say, though, this is the curse of making teams like G2 and FaZe. Normally, right, this is why I actually think players in football get mega overrated, Kassad. If you're on, like, the greatest team of all time, maybe if you're, like, Messi, I'll say you're, like, a GOAT, but there's going to be, like, 8 players on that team should be nowhere near best in their role, because what actually made the team work is that Messi can have all the resources he wants, and everyone else plays within a structure and does their job, and the job of the team almost is, like, we're a really good team, and then we have the guy that can win the game for us. You don't really want, like, every great player. Like, everyone knows the classic example in football is the Galacticos of fucking Real Madrid in the early 2000s, where they had like the fucking FIFA All-11 team, and they couldn't win anything. They barely even could win the league, mate. Because the problem was, there isn't space for this fucking genius winger to be crossing it when he doesn't ever get the ball when the striker runs in and scores. If there's 2 strikers, that's less opportunities for the best striker. There's a reason why in modern football, if people don't know, there's all these, like, genius, like, fucking fake 9, and, like, I play a 10 behind him and, like, pass the ball. It's like, because you can't just have, like, if it really was just scoring goals in football, you'd have 4 strikers, you'd play a 4-2-4, and they just all take turns scoring 3 goals a game. It doesn't exist. It will never exist. And Counter-Strike, no matter what people think, tactically will always come down to execution, and then frags can maybe make up for it if you don't have execution. So if you don't have execution, you can't frag out forever. There isn't just fragging. It's still fragging within the context of the tactical game, guys.
Because it goes, like, up and down. Your form goes up and down, and you need to rely on something. They try to rely on something, there is empty space, and they fall back on their asses.
Yeah.
When that happens. Because they have nothing to run. You said, like, you don't know much about the tactics and what they can do so many things tactically. So many things with a couple of rules, couple of mechanisms, couple of processes before, during, and after a game that can elevate their game for 30%. But they don't have the capacity to actually understand what needs to be done because they don't pay attention to their coaching staff. They just have their analyst, their coach. They're doing probably some poor preparations, some poor vetoing, some poor practices, some poor theory session, and they ended up in this position where they cannot throw a single grenade that's, not outdated for like 7 years. And that's how they don't swing together. That's how they don't react. That's how they don't have 2 flashes past 1.30 mark on Inferno on the map that you absolutely must have flashes before anything else. Right, that's how you can do so many things. And go back to the Rain argument, right? We spoke about this 6 months ago, 8 months ago. When was it? When we said, like, okay, he's not washed, but his prime has passed. He had his moments, he had his performances. Nowadays, it's becoming more rare. It happens, but it's more. But that's not what you need. You don't need 1 in 10, 1 in 7, 1 in 5. You need somebody that's going to be on a constant level of delivering frags for a team that's going for the championship. Right? I don't care who it is. It's not about throwing names. It's just like understanding maybe Rain's time has passed. Maybe we look for the future, combine somebody new into our team. For example, like Nerds did to Ants after they lost Pinks and they had this whole, shuffle a little bit. And then that's how we proceed. The same thing is going to happen to Vitality in about 5-6 months or 8 months when we see Dupree fall off completely. And people are going to be, oh, yeah, he's still one of the greats. He's one of the greats and one of the greatest, but his prime will go away. And you need to think about like what comes after next. If you want to maintain the culture and, the championship mentality that you want to have in your organization. Or are you going to end up like EG? That's how you're going to end up. The same thing is FaZe is going towards that path. If they don't do something, radical right now, I mean, for the next season, obviously they have like a couple events coming up, but after that they have to do something. There is so many things, right, that can be done. Right now they're not even close to, and they're always like, it's just that picture of like that much just got me too much. It just tilted me as soon as I saw it.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.